So much news today. Let's start with the fact that AMD apparently did launch a new GPU, actually kind of two of them or two variants of the same one. And unfortunately, as a GRE edition, Golden Rabbit edition GPU, this is only available in China, at least for now. In the past, we've seen these sometimes at least come out through pre-built systems into the wider market, and maybe we could hope for expanded availability on these. This is the rumored RX 6750 GRE. Now, in the rumors, and now this is official, we had seen conflicting reports on the specs. We had seen 10 gigabyte rumors, 12 gigabyte rumors, and it turns out the answer is yes. It has both. So there's two different versions of this, and this is now kind of confusing. We have a 6750 GRE 10 gigabyte and a 6750 GRE 12 gigabyte, but it's not just a VRAM difference. You actually have to cut down some of the other specs in order to accommodate that VRAM change. They also have different pricing, only $20 apart at $269 versus $289, although you can see the Chinese pricing where it's actually available down below that, and there will be partner models announced from Asus Gigabyte, PowerColor, Sapphire, and XFX. Available starting today. These did come out today, but again, only if you are in China. Now, so what is actually going on here? If we look at the specs sheet, we can see the differences between the two models. It's 36 compute units versus 40, going from the 10 gigabyte to the 12 gigabyte version, which again corresponds to the RT accelerators. The game clocks and boost clocks also change a bit as well. The main difference is to fit a 10 gigabyte chips versus 12 gigabytes, you would have a different memory interface, 160-bit versus 192-bit, although they both have 16 gigabit per second memory speeds. Anyway, they also have actually majorly different power, total board power targets at 170 watts versus 230 watts. Now, where does this stack up against the RX 6700, 6700 XT, and 6750 XT that we already had? Well, luckily this videocards.com article about this topic has, well, you know what, I'm just gonna make myself tiny, completely out of the way. Here I am. Okay, so if we go ahead and look at this, this is AMD's RX 6000 series. The GRE versions slot in right over here. If you look at the stream processors, which kind of fits in with the same thing as the compute units. I mean, it's not the same thing as the compute units, but like as those get cut down, this kind of shows you where you fall in. We can see that at 2,560 stream processors, the 12 gigabyte version has the same amount of stream processors as the 6700 XT and the same amount as the 6750 XT. Remember, the difference between the 6750 XT and the 6700 XT is in the clock speeds on the memory. The 50 version, the 6750, getting memory speeds up to 18 gigabits per second. But confusingly, the 6750 GRE versions have 16 gigabit per second memory, which actually puts them in line with the 6700 XT. So that's strange from a naming standpoint. Also then, we have the 6750 GRE 10 gigabyte version, which in terms of stream processors and, memory interface and whatnot, puts it in line with the 6700 non-XT. And it has, again, the 16 gigabit per second memory of the 6700 non-XT. And actually, if we look at power consumption, we see 170 watts versus the 175 watts on the 6700 non-XT. So in other words, if I pop back out here, what the heck? It looks like these are closer to being the non-50 versions than the 6750 XT versions. If we look at this from a spec standpoint, and they just throw a GRE at the end, the main difference is we now have a much lower MSRP. These MSRPs are much closer to the actual street prices of the 6700 XT and 6700 non-XT. Although the 6700 XT, I have seen it as low as $299. It is usually closer to $320. So a price of $289 actually does make the 6750 GRE, if it basically is a 6700 XT, looking at the specs, If it comes in at $30 less than the normal street price of a 6700 XT, that at least is sort of interesting. But like I said, given its availability in China, maybe this will be interesting worldwide in system integrators, or maybe it'll see a worldwide launch. In terms of partner models, we have seen at this point XFX launch its 6750 GRE Snowwolf, which according to the videocards.com is XFX's first white Radeon GPU. So there you go. That's kind of nice. There's some shots of that. Now anyway, this whole thing feels kind of weird. Now, how about Nvidia launching some new GPUs? Well, we have been seeing rumors that there will be some updates to the 4080 and 4070 GPUs. We've seen rumors of a 4080 Ti, or possibly that it would be called a 4080 Super. And there have been some less solid rumors that there may also be some updates to the 70 class. The 70 class already has a Ti version, so you can't just add in a 4070 Ti in the same way that a 4080 could fit a 4080 Ti, because there already, currently isn't one, unlike there already being a 4070 Ti. So the rumor here is that we may get super versions of both the 80 and 4070 Ti and 4070. So the rumors would be that we would have a 4080 Super, a 4070 Ti Super, which would be the first time we have ever seen, to my knowledge, a Ti model also get a super version. So it'd be the first Ti Super. And then there would also be a 4070 Super. There's no more specs on this leak, and it also says the date is to be decided. But as these random tweets go, how do we judge the validity of these claims? Well, the leaker is Hongxing 2020. I may have mispronounced that, and apologies if I did. So how do we judge the track record? Now, the videocards.com article, and all my sources will be in the video description if you want to take a closer look yourself, has claimed that this leaker has been more accurate recently, but got a 30 series super variant wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that a 30 series super variant hadn't been considered or in the works, and maybe at the time that this was leaked, it was a thing being considered, and maybe Nvidia just chose not to, because during the 30 series, you had, the crypto everything happening, and GPUs could sell for whatever. Why update them? They're literally just money printing machines. So maybe it wasn't bad info, maybe just Nvidia chose not to follow up on it, who knows? But the point is, this specific source rumored a 30 series super variant, which never happened. However, according to videocards.com, this leaker has been more accurate recently. So that's all we have to go off of. So this is definitely not 40 series super versions confirmed, but this is interesting, and what would they do with that? A lot of people have criticized the 4070 and especially the 4070 Ti version as being, the 4070 with 12 gigabytes of VRAM, it's not awful. It would be nice if it had more, and it certainly looks bad when compared with the 16 gigabyte 7800 XT from AMD. But the 4070 Ti specifically being 12 gigabytes for $800, that just feels like you're being ripped off. You feel like at an $800 price point, they could have tossed in some more VRAM, right? So if I had my wish list for what we'd see here, it would be 16 gigabytes on on the 70 class super cards. On the 4080 Super, I could keep 16 gigabytes if they want, fine. If they want to add more, great. I don't have a real problem with the 4080 at 16 gigabyte. What I would be interested in seeing is, there's a lot of performance gap between the 4080 and the 4090. Can we fill some of that performance gap? And can we do it without increasing the price? And that's a big question. If we could force the normal 4080 down to $1,000 or less and slot in the 4080 Super as closer to the 4090 performance, but for $1,200, that would actually be interesting. But again, this is just me spitballing ideas that would actually make these interesting products. We'll have to see what happens. Now, in terms of actual new GPUs being launched in the United States market, the most interesting one is the A580. I talked about this a bit in my last news roundup video. I have not been able to purchase one and review it yet myself. I'm not on Nvidia's review sample list. What are we looking at here? This is from 3D Center, and 3D Center, whenever a new GPU comes out, I always wait a few days and get their meta-analysis. I love these because any particular review outlet can only test so many GPUs and so many games at so many configurations. So the most accurate result is usually an aggregate average of all of the major reviews, which is what we're seeing here. And they set the A580 as a baseline of 100%. And now you can see that on average, while different review outlets got slightly different numbers, when you average all of it, the A750 from Intel is 9.5% faster on average compared to the A580 at 1080p without using ray tracing. We can see that the 7600 from AMD, is about 30% faster. The more interesting, because it's a price competitor, is the 6600. The 6600 is on average about 4% faster. Although, there are specific games where it is a larger win because Intel has improved its driver optimization a lot, but it still has some misses. The RTX 3050, again, closer price competitor, but still more expensive, only reaching about 81% of the performance of the A580. Also, if you take a look at the next page of the article, they do a ray tracing performance and a 1440p performance. And, relatively, it actually does even better at 1440p relatively to the other cards, although is it strong enough for 1440p? Question mark. But the ray tracing performance also, it performs well versus AMD especially, where it now takes a noticeable lead over the RX 6600. However, is this the class of card where you're going to be turning on ray tracing? Question mark. Personally, I would be turning down settings, not up settings, to reach higher frame rates. But anyway, thought this was some useful and interesting meta-analysis of a wide variety of reviews aggregated. Now, in other news, I've reported that AMD's Anti-Lag Plus was causing VAC bans in Counter-Strike 2. Shortly after that, it was also reported that other games' anti-cheat systems were also flagging Anti-Lag Plus as a potential cheat and getting people banned. AMD immediately pulled their driver that had enabled Anti-Lag Plus, and then they have now released a new driver version. It's called a beta release in this headline. What that really means is it's not reached WHQL certification yet, which isn't technically the same thing as a beta, but whatever. Anyway, what the main change here is they just pulled Anti-Lag Plus from the driver to avoid these issues. So anyway, if you weren't aware of those issues, be aware and maybe update to this driver that kills Anti-Lag Plus support. This is also the driver that had the game support and optimization for Assassin's Creed Mirage, Lords of the Fallen, and Forza Motorsport. So this is definitely a driver that you would want to be on. And, they had pulled it, but now you have it, but just without the Anti-Lag Plus. That's what's going on here. They also note some other fixes and known issues along with that, as usual with driver updates. Now, the other big news in PC hardware is the new Intel CPUs. And by big news, maybe I don't mean big news. I mean, it's a new Intel CPU generation, technically, so that's usually big news. But here's Tech PowerUp's relative performance. Why are they at 1080p? Because you're trying to isolate the CPU as the limiting factor, not the GPU. Anyway, if we look at these results, and I'm not going to give you all of their results, please follow the links in the video descriptions. They're showing that the 14900K is literally within less than 1% of the 13900KS, and it is a massive 1.4% ahead of the 13900K. It still loses to the 7800X3D, which on Amazon Prime Big Deal Day was available for $350, which is a lot less than a 14900K. Additionally, the power consumption difference, this is taken from Gamers Nexus review, which again, you could take a look at yourself following the link in the video description. The 14900K draws around 287 watts of power on an all-core workload versus the 7800X3D at about 86.4 watts of power. which is a significantly more energy efficiency. However, that's an all-core workload. The Hardware Unboxed review did a good job of looking at power consumption while actually playing games. And while it does pull a little bit closer, because power consumption does generally go down when you're gaming, it's still massively more power consumption on the 14900K versus the 7800X 3D. And also, in another, if you want to look at another game set showing the 7800X 3D winning, in the games that Hardware Unboxed took a look at, we can see here that they also have the 7800X 3D ahead of the 14900K and 13900K in their test suite as well, which is, different games, and they're at 1080p and whatnot. So anyway, the point here is, man, the 14900K as a gaming CPU seems to be a massive disappointment. It's not that it's bad, it's just that it still didn't take the gaming performance lead over the 7800X 3D. They're close enough that you could basically call it a tie, which is what I always considered the 13900K and the 7800X 3D. It basically, depending on the game, they'll trade blows on which one's the fastest gaming CPU. So you could choose a different set of games, which would show the 14900K or 13900K as the winner. But it's going to be close. But the 7800X 3D does it for a lower price and lower power consumption, which also lowers the price. Why does that also lower the price? Because you can get by with like literally a $20 or $30 CPU cooler on a 7800X 3D. I'm not saying you should or that that's optimal, but you could. Whereas to get max performance out of your 14900K, you're probably gonna need at least like a 360 millimeter AIO and maybe more. So anyway, long story short, very, very, very disappointing from a gaming perspective. Now, from a application perspective, which Tech Power Up did take a look at here as well, the 14900K is now the performance leader, and it would be a lot better than a 7800X 3D in applications that use all cores, because it does just have more cores when you look at all those efficiency cores added in. But like I said, from a gaming perspective, you're going to need to pay more for a bigger cooler and put out more heat into your room. And whether or not you care about the increased electric bill, there'll be that too. And still, on average, possibly lose to the 7800X 3D. So, and you're also on the last generation of your motherboard, so you also can't, if you buy a 7800X 3D, there's a good chance you could buy an 8800X 3D and put it in the same motherboard and RAM, and maybe even a 9800X 3D, although that's not guaranteed, right? Anyway, I'm just saying, personally, if I was trying to buy a high-end gaming CPU, it would still be the 7800X 3D, despite the fact that we now have a new generation from Intel. Although by new generation, it's a newer number. It made it a 14 instead of a 13, but it is not actually a new architecture. It is a refresh of the Raptor Lake that we already saw on the 13th gen. Now, that being said, the 14900KF has broken the CPU frequency world record, so at least there's that. And then in other news, what about actual new Intel CPU architectures? There are now starting to be Intel Core Ultra series, including the Core Ultra 9, 185H. I am going to have to get used to the new naming scheme. But anyway, Intel Core Ultra 9 185H, finally spotted with 16 cores and 5.1 gigahertz clock. Now, my understanding, though, is that the Core Ultra 9 185H is a mobile CPU. This will not be coming to desktop. I believe this is Meteor Lake, right? I get so lost on I get so lost on all the code names and whatnot here, but I'm fairly certain this will be Meteor Lake, which is, I think, a mobile CPUs that will be coming towards the end of this year and early next year, 2024, and then it will be Arrow Lake, something with an A. Pretty sure Arrow Lake, that will be the next desktop architecture. That will be an actual new architecture coming from Intel. Whew. Anyway, all this CPU names and stuff, getting me confused, especially with Intel changing their naming scheme. Anyway, in other news that's really exciting, Nvidia's RTX 4090 prices have been creeping upward in some regions. So Yay. Oh, and also, if you live in certain regions, it could get a lot worse because the US government is restricting shipments of GeForce RTX 4090 to China, as well as some other countries. This is to restrict the basically anything more powerful than an RTX 4080, which includes a bunch of the workstation type GPUs or data center type GPUs, but also includes the RTX 4090, is now going to be limited in shipping to a variety of other countries. So, and this is again due to the terms of U.S. embargoes on trying to like stop other, certain countries, including China and others, from getting the AI data centers up and running and all that. Now, realistically, you can probably still buy 4090s in these countries through other channels if you're just trying to buy one for yourself. Now, maybe that will affect the price. What they're really trying to limit is like giant shipments of these to set up like a data center with 10,000 of them or something like that. So I bet they'll still be available, just probably it'll be a little harder to get and maybe more expensive. Anyway, if you were thinking, well, shoot, then I'll just switch to streaming. Well, they're raising the price on that too. So Nvidia is increasing prices for GeForce NOW game streaming service starting from November. Looks like it's not in every region, but it is in Canada, the UK, the Eurozone, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Czechia, and Poland. And this looks to be blocked by my fat head. There you go. This looks to be the changes in this looks to be the pricing structure that we'll be seeing here. Anyway, in other NVIDIA news, in my last news video, my last news video, I mentioned that there were reports of frame generation working on RTX 20 and 30 series cards in Portal Prelude RTX. However, I had my doubts about whether that was actually working properly, given the footage. I did not test it myself. The footage that was on display looked like the frame pacing was terrible. The frame rate number went up, but it didn't look smoother, which made me question if it was actually working. Now, I put this immediately as a pinned comment on that video, but for those of you who watched that first video and didn't see the pinned comment or watched the video before there was a pinned comment, Nvidia has reached out and specifically said that it is not actually working. The frame rate number does go up, but it is not actually generating new frames. And this can be confirmed by capturing the footage and sorting through frames. What happens is two frames it repeats the same frame twice. So it duplicates the frame without actually interpolating a generated frame in between. So in other words, the frame rate number goes up because there are more frames, but the frames are identical to the frames that came before them, so it does not in any way increase the smoothness or actually generate new frames, but it does make frame rate counter number go up. So there is that. And they're also, I think, patching stuff to make that not happen anymore. Anyway, there is a direct quote from Nvidia here. They also actually reached out to me on my channel email when they saw my video reporting on this, to clarify that that isn't actually working and that you can use iCat tools. I haven't actually verified this myself, but that's how you would do it. You would film the footage and you would then count the frames and notice 2 frames, but they're identical. I believe, I've seen some people saying it's just NVIDIA going for damage control, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't have time to do that myself, but do it yours. Actually just record the footage and look for the 2 identical frames. I don't believe NVIDIA would be lying about that on something that is so easy to actually check. Maybe I'll get around to it at some point, but honestly, it doesn't feel worth my time at this point in time. Now, in other NVIDIA news, though, on RTX features that actually are now coming to the 20 series and weren't available before, NVIDIA's RTX Video Super Resolution version 1.5 is now available, and this both improves the quality, although that's their claim, I have not verified that myself, and is now supported across all RTX 20 series GPUs. So this is now available on more GPUs, and the quality is at least claimed to be improved. Specifically, I don't know if they have any screenshots of it here, but I think the basic idea is that it should now more accurately preserve details as part of the upscaling process. and the overall image should look sharper and crisper than ever before. Again, this is claims from Nvidia themselves. I have not been able to double check this. I think they're also saying that you can use it on native resolution footage now as well. Anyway, I don't know if I'll have time to get around to testing this, but just be aware that this is now updated and available if you want to take a look. In other news, SteamOS 3.5.1 preview has added undervolting support for the Steam Deck, which is interesting. And in other gaming handheld related news, gaming PC handheld related news, GPD has accused AMD of breach of contract by not supplying enough Ryzen 7 7840U APUs on time, which will be causing a delay of WinMax 2 on certain versions. They're claiming that they had a deal with AMD for a certain number of those APUs, and they didn't get them. Currently, this is affecting these listed models right here. So if you ordered one of those, looks like there's no date for when you might actually get them. And lastly, in a bit of PC gaming news, the Cities Skylines 2 developers have officially announced that they missed their performance targets but are launching the game anyway. Are we happy they're at least giving us the heads up before launch rather than just issuing an apology after launch? I guess that's better, right? Wouldn't the better option, though, be to just, launch the game when it's ready and you did meet the performance optimization targets? But my guess is it's probably the game developers being told to launch anyway by the publisher, and then they're just going to have to try to continue to optimize the game after launch. And that's probably often what happens here, is the publisher's like, launch the game, guys, and they're like, we're not really optimized. Launch the game, guys. Okay, I guess we'll just do a bunch of patches. So anyway, the direct quote is, Cities Skylines 2 is a next-gen title, and naturally it demands certain hardware requirements. With that said, while our team has worked tirelessly to deliver the best experience possible, we have not achieved the benchmark we targeted. In light of this, we still think for the long term of the project, releasing now is the best way forward. In other words, I'm guessing, publisher said release now anyway for financial reasons. Now back to the direct quote. We are proud of the unique gameplay features in Cities Skylines 2, and we genuinely believe that it offers a great experience that you will enjoy. We'll continue improving the game over the coming months. In other words, expect the endless stream of performance patches that we've been getting from games on PC lately. But we also do want to manage expectations on performance for the coming release. Now, I do want to mention, though, that the minimum system requirements are extremely low. If you actually check them. I mean, not extremely low, but I mean, guys, for a... that says CPU, it should be GPU. Anyway, they're only saying a GTX 784 gigabyte or a Radeon RX 470. They're not asking for that much on the minimum specs. CPU-wise, an i7 6700K or a 2600X. But given this quote, I'm wondering how well the game will actually run on that type of hardware. The recommended specs are significantly higher, with an RTX 3080 or RX 6800 XT, and the CPU's at a 12600K or Ryzen 5 5800X. So very curious how it actually runs on the min spec. I don't know if I'll have time to actually test this one when it comes out. You guys could let me know in the comments how interested in that you are. In related news on games that are needing massive amounts of patching after launch, Lords of the Fallen, I did a video on it after there'd been 1 or 2 patches, like by day 2. When I looked at it, there's been several more patches since then. This game, that's one thing I will say for it, the devs are releasing constant patches to try to get this thing into shape. So honestly, it was crashing a bit for me, but at the lower settings and with upscaling, it did run fairly well on some modest hardware. It wasn't that bad, although it was still Unreal Engine stutters. And speaking of Unreal Engine, we're seeing rumors, this is a journalist claiming this, whether it's true or not, question mark, that 343 Industries is working on a new Halo campaign using Unreal Engine, which then immediately brings up questions on how this will perform. Will it stutter? Will this be good? Is this a good thing? Maybe some of the issues with recent Halo games could be solved by not having to make their own engine. Who knows? But this video is getting to be about 30 minutes long. So I'm going to leave it here, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.